What happens when a grieving mother refuses to remain silent, even after the world believes the case is closed? Just 1 minute ago, Menglong's mother broke her silence with an explosive truth that has reignited outrage and shaken millions to their core. Could this revelation finally expose what truly happened behind the shocking incident? Join Red Carpet Revealed as we uncover the stunning details right now. The world thought the story had ended. The court hearings were over. The final reports had been filed. And the tragic death of Menglong had been neatly packaged into a narrative that authorities declared complete. Fans had mourned. Vigils had been held. And though suspicion lingered, there was an official sense of closure. But closure can be a dangerous illusion. And 1 minute ago, that illusion shattered forever. In a trembling but defiant voice, Menglong's mother broke her silence, unveiling explosive truths that tore open wounds the public thought had begun to heal. What she revealed was not just the grief of the mother, but evidence that the case had been manipulated, distorted, and prematurely buried. Her words have reignited outrage across the globe, sparking a demand to reopen what officials had insisted was closed. The setting was deceptively simple. Press room, rows of cameras, a handful of microphones. Who had spent months in grief and silence. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes red with exhaustion, her face etched with pain. Yet when she spoke, her voice carried a force that silenced the room. "My son did not die the way they told you," she declared. The air grew heavy. Reporters exchanged stunned glances. And in that moment, the case of Menglong transformed from a finished tragedy into a living storm. Her statement was not vague emotion, it was the opening shot of a revelation that promised to shake the foundations of both justice and the entertainment world. For months, fans had been torn between accepting the official story and believing their own instincts that something was terribly wrong. The official version painted Menglong's death as an unfortunate consequence of medical complications. A tragic but natural conclusion. Yet details had never aligned. Witnesses spoke in whispers of unusual behavior inside the hospital. Surveillance cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned. Reports had been delayed and inconsistent. Still, the courts declared the matter resolved, and public attention began to wane. Now, with one sentence, Menglong's mother resurrected every doubt, confirming that the truth had been suppressed. Her decision to speak out was not impulsive. It was, she explained, a choice she made after months of intimidation, after nights of sleepless reflection, and after uncovering evidence that could no longer be hidden. She held up documents she claimed were altered hospital records. The papers, visibly marked with conflicting signatures and mismatched times, seemed to prove that key details about Menglong's final hours had been falsified. She revealed that her family had received a mysterious phone call just minutes before Menglong's official time of death, warning them not to ask questions. Her hands trembled as she described the chilling words, "Stay quiet if you want peace." For a mother already on the edge of despair, the call was both a threat and a confirmation that her son's death was more than a tragedy. It was part of a calculated deception. As she recounted these details, gasps filled the press room, and live streams across social media platforms exploded with messages of support, disbelief, and rage. What shook the world most was the audio recording she played. The file had been kept secret for months, stored on her personal device, too dangerous to release until now. In it, a man's voice, believed to be a hospital staff member, was heard muttering, "He wasn't supposed to survive." The words, muffled but unmistakable, cut through the silence like a blade. Journalists clutched their headphones and screamed online. And within minutes the clip had been replayed across networks worldwide. The authenticity of the recording is now under review. Its impact is undeniable. It directly contradicts the official conclusion of unavoidable death. It suggests intent, manipulation, perhaps even murder. And it came not from tabloids or conspiracy theorists, but from the grieving mother of the man whose life was stolen. The reactions were immediate and ferocious. On Twitter, hashtags like "Mother Speaks Truth," "Reopen case," and "Justice for Menglong" surged to the top of global trends. Fans who had long suspected a cover-up felt vindicated, their pain now sharpened by righteous fury. News anchors struggled to keep composure as they replayed the recording. Analysts debated its implications. Commentators demanded an emergency investigation. In Beijing, crowds gathered outside the hospital once again, holding candles and signs that read, "Truth cannot be buried." In Seoul, Tokyo, and Los Angeles. Fans organized digital vigils, their voices uniting across borders and calls for justice. The sense of unfinished business had transformed into an unstoppable wave. Menglong's mother continued her statement with a mix of sorrow and determination. She revealed that multiple witnesses had reached out to her privately, confessing they had been pressured into silence during the initial investigation. Some claimed they were threatened with losing their jobs, others said they were offered money to stay quiet. She described visiting one nurse who had since moved abroad, who broke down in tears and whispered, "We wanted to save him, but we weren't allowed." These accounts, yet to be formally verified, added devastating weight to her claims. They suggested that the cover-up was not a matter of negligence but of deliberate orchestration, involving multiple layers of authority determined to ensure a specific outcome. The press conference lasted less than an hour, but its effects will be felt for years. By the time she stepped away from the podium, her image, frail but unyielding, had become a symbol of courage. Her words had reignited not only the case but the broader conversation about corruption, betrayal, and the price of silence in the entertainment industry. Mother's voice, once confined to private grief, now carried across continents. Fans described her as the voice of Menglong himself, speaking truths he could no longer reveal. For them, her revelations were not just evidence, they were justice long delayed but finally breaking through. Scrambled to respond. Within hours, the Ministry of Justice announced that the recording and documents provided would be examined. Legal experts admitted that the evidence was strong enough to warrant reopening the case, though they cautioned the process would be long and complex. Hospital executives refused to comment, citing confidentiality, but leaked memos suggested internal panic. International human rights groups released statements of support, urging transparency and promising to monitor the investigation. The silence of the powerful was now being broken not by choice, but by the unstoppable force of public outrage. End of the day, what had seemed like a closed chapter was once again wide open. Questions piled up faster than answers. Who tampered with the records? Who made the threatening call? Whose voice was captured in the recording? And most importantly, why was Menglong not supposed to survive? These questions hung in the air like storm clouds, promising that the coming days would reveal even darker truths. For now, one thing was certain: the case of Menglong was no longer closed. It was alive, burning with fury, and demanding justice with a voice louder than ever before. Press conference was over, but its aftershocks were only beginning. Within minutes of Menglong's mother walking away from the podium, her revelations had already triggered an international storm. The audio recording, the altered documents, the whispered threats, all of it tore the veneer of closure from a case that authorities had insisted was settled. Phones rang nonstop in government offices. Newsroom lights burned late into the night, and social media erupted into a chorus of fury and disbelief. The demand was universal: reopen the case. What Menglong's mother had exposed was more than grief. It was a bombshell that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed narrative of his death. Investigators found themselves caught between defending their prior conclusions and responding to a tidal wave of public pressure. At first, officials released cautious statements, insisting that the case had been thoroughly examined. As the recording spread like wildfire and experts confirmed that it could not be dismissed outright, the walls of denial began to crumble. Forensic analysts, interviewed live on television, explained that the phrase "he wasn't supposed to survive" was consistent with the voice of a male staff member at the hospital. More chillingly, the timing of the recording matched the critical moments of Menglong's final hours. It was not a rumor, it was evidence, and it demanded a reckoning. Reopening of the investigation was announced 2 days later. Crowds cheered outside government buildings as the decision was made public, their chants of justice for Menglong echoing into the night. For fans who had felt silenced, it was a moment of vindication. For Menglong's mother, it was both victory and agony, proof that her persistence had forced the truth into the open. Also confirmation that her son's death had indeed been surrounded by lies. Her courage became the heartbeat of the movement, forming her from a grieving parent into a symbol of resistance. Investigators dug deeper. More witnesses began to come forward, freed by the courage of Menglong's mother. Nurses and technicians who had remained silent during the first trial confessed to being pressured into submission. One revealed that she was threatened with dismissal and blacklisting if she spoke to the press. Another admitted to receiving a mysterious envelope filled with cash, delivered to her locker the day after Menglong's death. Accounts painted a horrifying picture. Not only had evidence been suppressed, but active intimidation had ensured that the official version of events remained unchallenged. The fear was so pervasive that even months later, witnesses spoke in whispers, terrified that the same forces could still reach them. The investigation uncovered new documents that strengthened the case for conspiracy. Logs from the hospital's security system showed deliberate tampering. Surveillance cameras had been shut down manually, not by technical malfunction as originally claimed. Financial records revealed irregularities in the hospital's accounting, suggesting large sums of money had moved in and out during the same week of Menglong's death. Perhaps most disturbing were emails traced to high-ranking figures in the entertainment industry, hinting at a plan to resolve the Menglong problem before it grew uncontrollable. Each revelation added fuel to the fire. That the case was not just about medical negligence but about a coordinated effort to silence a man who may have stood in the way of powerful interests. The manager's prior arrest and conviction now looked less like closure and more like a diversion. Journalists revisited the trial transcripts, noting that his warnings, "I wasn't the only one," had been ignored. Now, those words seemed prophetic. He was not exonerated, but he was no longer the sole villain in the story. Instead, the investigation pointed toward a network of individuals, still unnamed, who had orchestrated events from behind the scenes. The world began to ask the question no one had dared before: was Menglong targeted not by chance, but by design, to protect profits, contracts, the fragile power structures of an industry built on exploitation? The cultural reaction was unprecedented. In Beijing, nightly vigils continued. They were now joined by marches demanding reform in the entertainment industry. In Tokyo, fans gathered outside Chinese consulates holding placards that read, "Truth knows no borders." In New York, a coalition of artists and human rights advocates held a rally in Times Square, projecting Menglong's face on a giant screen with the words, "He deserves justice." Online, the movement was relentless. Hashtags like Reopen UCase and Mother Speaks Truth generating millions of posts daily. The death of one actor had become a global referendum on corruption, betrayal, and the value of human life in systems ruled by money and fear. Throughout it all, Menglong's mother remained the central figure. Her interviews, though rare, had immense weight. In one tearful appearance, she looked directly into the camera and said, "My son deserves justice. The world deserves the truth." Her words resonated across languages and cultures, repeated in headlines, memes, and chants. She was not just a mother grieving, she was a warrior demanding accountability. Her courage inspired others to speak, and slowly, silence that had once smothered the case began to crack. As the reopened investigation gained momentum, theories emerged. Some experts suggested that Menglong had been preparing to expose unfair contracts and hidden abuses within the industry. Believed he had unknowingly become entangled in financial disputes that made him a liability. The possibility that his death was a warning to others loomed large. A reminder that the cost of defiance could be fatal. What had once seemed like a single tragedy now appeared to be the visible tip of a vast, invisible iceberg of corruption. Authorities, under immense global scrutiny, promised full transparency this time. Independent investigators were brought in, and international observers were invited to monitor the proceedings. It was a step toward rebuilding trust. So revealed just how deeply compromised the first investigation had been. The public demanded not only justice for Menglong but accountability for those who had buried the truth. Prosecutors began drafting charges not only against the hospital staff but against executives whose names had surfaced in the leaked emails. The possibility of high-profile arrests loomed, sending shockwaves through boardrooms and studios across Asia. Yet even as progress was made, danger lingered. Whistleblowers reported being followed. Journalists investigating the case received threats. Menglong's mother was placed under constant security. Forces that had tried to silence her son were not gone. Their reach was terrifying. But this time, the world was watching. Every threat was documented. Every act of intimidation amplified. Every attempt to obscure the truth met with louder cries for justice. The momentum was unstoppable, driven by the voice of the mother who refused to be silenced again. The story of Menglong's death had always been tragic. But now, it was also transformative. There's revelations forced a reckoning not only with the circumstances of his passing, but with the systems that had allowed it to be hidden. The reopened investigation was not just about assigning blame, it was about dismantling the culture of silence, intimidation, corruption that had claimed too many lives. And though the path to justice remained long and uncertain, one fact was undeniable: the world would never see Yu Menglong as just another star lost too soon. He had become a symbol, a rallying cry. Reminder that truth cannot be buried forever. As the investigation moved into its final stages, the words of his mother remained the guiding light. He wasn't supposed to survive, she repeated, voice breaking but unyielding. But his truth will. Those words echoed in courtrooms, in rallies, hearts of millions who refused to forget. The case was no longer closed. It was alive, blazing, and unstoppable. Though justice had been delayed, it was no longer denied. The silence has been broken. The world thought was a closed case has erupted into one of the most explosive revelations in modern memory. With the courage of a grieving mother, hidden truths have surfaced, exposing manipulation, betrayal, and a chilling conspiracy that robbed Yu Menglong of his chance to live. The reopened investigation is not only about justice for one beloved star, but a reckoning for an entire system that believed it could bury the truth forever. At Red Carpet Revealed, we stand with you, fans, readers, and truth seekers across the globe, who have refused to look away. Your voices, your grief, relentless demand for justice have kept this story alive when so many wanted it silenced. For every candle lit, message shared, and every call for truth, we thank you. This is not the end. As the investigation continues and the shadows begin to clear, we promise to follow every lead, every testimony, revelation. For Yu Menglong, for his family, and for all who believe in justice, the fight is not over. Thank you for standing with us. This has been Red Carpet Revealed.